Hello, my friends. Well, what strange, chaotic, unnerving, stressful times we are living through. It's a bit of a cliche, I know, but it's really unprecedented at times. And in these times, my area of expertise, which is communication, particularly persuasive, engaging communication, has obviously been thrown into all sorts of sort of chaos and opportunities and possibilities and problems and challenges. And I'm getting lots and lots of messages from people. How do I present online? How do I keep my teams engaged? How do I keep presenting to clients? How do I even get people to turn up for an online meeting or an online presentation? There are clearly lots of problems and questions and stresses many of us are having around this topic at the moment. So in this series of videos, I'm going to try and explore some of the ways you can be thinking about communicating in a more virtual, a more online world, and also give you as many tips and techniques as I can, as many as I've got for you. My thinking is certainly going to change and grow as we do this together. Several clients of mine have already started asking me to put together some sessions. How can their teams communicate better? How can they stay engaged both with themselves and with clients? So I'm exploring all sorts of ideas with my clients as well. So I'm sure that my thinking will change as we do this. So I'm going to do a little video every day exploring some of this, giving you some ideas. But let's start with a couple of foundational things. First of all, I think, it's foolish. Anybody who thinks the world is going back to the way it was, I think is probably wrong. It would be foolish to make firm predictions, I think, in our current environment. But I think we're not going back to the way things were, certainly not completely. We are now thrown much more into a world of virtual communication, online communication. And there are problems and challenges with that, but there are also possibilities and there are opportunities with that. And I want to help as many of you as possible embrace those opportunities in terms of enhancing your executive presence, building your personal brand, building your business brand with your clients and with your teams and so on. So that's one thing. We're not going back to the way things were before. And the second thing is, I think what we're going to see, I strongly suspect what we're going to see, is that the world of online communication is going to bifurcate into two different types of communication. Bifurcate. Is that how you pronounce the word? I'm not, I've just realized I'm not sure. It's one of those words I've seen written down. I know what it means, but I've never heard anybody say it. Maybe it's bifurcate. I don't know. Bifurcate, I think. I'm sure that some expert will tell me in the comments. Probably itching to type away. Okay, divide. Let's use the word divide. The world of online communicating is going to divide, I think, into two main forms of communication. And one of those forms is going to be slightly more formal, slightly more structured, and it's what I'd call virtual presenting or online presenting. So it's the sort of thing I'm doing now. It doesn't have to be formal in tone, but it's me as a presenter presenting a message to you as an audience. So this is a virtual presentation or an online presentation. There's still going to be a lot of that around. That's probably going to grow. It's going to be very important. How do you get your message heard? How do you get people to act on your ideas? How do you get people to believe what you're saying? That's going to stay. But there's another form of communication which I think is growing now and is going to become more and more important. And I'd call it sort of, I suppose, online conversation, possibly online meeting, but not necessarily even as formal as a meeting. And this form of communication is going to be much less structured. It's really going to be people getting together, hanging out in the Google phrase, Google Hangouts. And it's going to be, that form of communication is going to be really important in terms of creating or maintaining culture, creating or maintaining values in a business, and creating and maintaining new and common forms of working together. And it's going to be a really important form of communication online, but it's new for many of us in many ways, and we're going to have to learn ways of managing this. So I'm going to try and deal with both those different forms of communication across this series of videos, but let's start with online presentations, the virtual presentations, because many of you will be having to do those right now, and they're probably changing hour by hour. I'm going to give you three main tips today to do for this, but I really want you to get in your head something really, really clear. And if you've read my book, my award-winning book, The Busy Person's Guide to Great Presenting, I know many of you have read it. Thank you for buying it. But in there, I really hammer home this idea that if you want to be a great presenter, you've got to constantly start by thinking of your audience. And what great presenters say to themselves over and over again is they say, what does my audience need to hear? rather than what do I want to say, all right? So bad presenters, and in the online environment, they'll just fire up a camera and they'll just say, oh, I've got a few things I want to say today, and they'll just say them in the way that matters to themselves as the presenter. But great presenters try and step into the world of their audience. And I really want you to do this right from today. Even if you're not giving a presentation today, start thinking about the world of your audience. So if your audience is your team that you're managing, start thinking about what's going on from them. What's it like for them to be thrown into a world of having to find a home office or work from a kitchen table? What's it like for them to be fumbling with new technology, or to be on the phone every single second in ways that they weren't before? To be snowed under with all sorts of emails about stuff they weren't thinking about, even 2 weeks ago. If you're presenting to a board, what's going on in the mind of board members? What are they focused on? What are their priorities at the moment? There's all sorts of insecurities and instability at the moment for people. So try and, right from today, try and step mentally into the world of your audience, because that will apply to every single video I'm making. And you'll probably get bored with me saying this, but focus on your audience, right? Focus on the needs and the priorities of your audience, because you don't have to agree with them and you don't have to be in the same situation as them, but it will always make your message clearer and more specific to the audience. So let's assume that you've done that. You're getting this as a mental habit, and you're starting to think about how you might, if you like, enhance your own personal brand, enhance your own presence, get a reputation as a really good online presenter, because this will stand you in really, really good stead over the weeks and months and years to come. Let's look at the journey right from the beginning. It obviously begins before you start speaking and before you start looking into a camera. And I think it begins really from the moment that you send out an invitation to people to attend your virtual presentation. So today, the tips I want to give you are around how you do that. So the first thing is, think about the invitations that you're sending to people in diaries. Far too many people send out invitations and they're things like update on Project X, or overview of Q1, or introductions, ... right? And they're not illegal and they're not immoral, but they're really boring, and very few of your team members or very few of your board or very few of your clients are going to wake up in the morning and look at a diary and say, oh, 1 o'clock, I've got a presentation that's an overview of Project X. Well, who cares about that really? Nobody's going to get excited. Nobody's going to get intrigued. So if you can change the way you think about the titles of your presentation in the calendar invitations, even slightly, it will just get people a bit more intrigued, a bit more interested. You want people on your side before you even begin speaking, before they've even opened up the technology. So, even something like 3 things we need to achieve by Thursday, ... Even that is not wildly bonkers or eccentric or anything, but even that is slightly more interesting than overview of Project X. All right, so try and be as creative as you can. Try and keep thinking of the people you're going to be presenting to. What would intrigue them? What would interest them? What would get them focused? Another advantage of thinking about titles in this way is you do get people a little bit more mentally engaged before they even come to your presentation. Because what you don't want when you're doing a virtual presentation is you don't want people just to be passive. You don't want them to be mentally passive. And one of the differences, the main differences we're going to see in online virtual presenting, is we've got to find ways of engaging people more, because we can't stick to that model anymore. If people just sort of come into a room, they slump in a room, you talk for 45 minutes, and occasionally someone puts up a hand and asks a question if they're particularly interested. We can't do that anymore. Nobody has the time. We need to grab their focus, grab their attention. So one way of doing that before you even begin is a more interesting title in the calendar invitation. By the way, one thing I should have mentioned is I'm trying to keep all this advice as broad as possible so that it's not related to any specific piece of technology. So whether you're presenting just in a teleconference over the phone, whether you're using Zoom or Skype or FaceTime or Microsoft Teams or Google Hangouts, whatever it is, this advice will be relevant across all those platforms, and probably platforms that haven't even been invented yet. So the second thing that you can think of, and I think this is going to become more and more important, is try and keep your online presentations, your virtual presentations, as brief as possible. And I strongly recommend that you give yourself the discipline of no more than 15 minutes, all right? Really, if you can't make a point in 15 minutes, you're not going to make it in 30 anyway. Secondly, this will give you real message discipline. It will really force you, if you've only got 15 minutes or up to 15 minutes to make your point, to make your presentation, it will force you to do a little bit more preparation. It will force you to get your message just a little bit clearer, a little bit more targeted at the audience, a little bit more directed. And over time, what this will do is it will build your credibility and it will build your authority. Clients love it. Oh, we're hearing from salesperson X. They're great. They're always on point. They always keep to the point. They're always on time. They're always engaging and brief. Right? They'll welcome your updates. They'll welcome your pitches. The same with teams. The same with board members, whoever you're presenting to. Try and get a reputation for someone who gets right to what matters, keeps to the main points, and keeps to time, and keeps it all brief. And there are far too many meeting invitations going into diaries, and they're still an hour long, regardless of whether you actually need an hour or not. So try and do that. People will be slightly surprised often when you do that, and they'll be pleasantly surprised. Nobody is ever going to say to you, excuse me, that virtual presentation was too focused, too clear, too brief. Please, can you make it vaguer, woollier, and please keep it going for an entire hour. The other benefit to thinking in terms of keeping time short is we've got to be honest and realistic, right? If we're working from home, there are many more distractions. You know, someone's cat's going to be walking around, their children are probably at home with them at the moment, the kettle's going to be boiling in the background, all sorts of things are distracting people. People will be able to focus for shorter periods of time, and they'll be able to postpone other things for shorter periods of time. But if you're asking people for an hour of their attention, you're going to be woollier, people will get distracted more, and you'll just be yet another virtual presenter who isn't very good at it. So that's the second thing. And then the third thing that you can do is really focus on your three key points before you even begin, right? Get those really clear in your mind and put them, or versions of them, into an agenda, either in the calendar invitation or in an email that you send out in advance. There's something that happens to us when we get an agenda from someone. It tells us, oh, okay, you're prepared. You know how this is going to go. This is not going to be a waste of my time. We're psychologically a bit more predisposed to people. I know some of you will be doing this already, but if you're not doing this already, please do it. It's a really great discipline to get into. It doesn't have to be complex. You know, in a 15-minute presentation, it can be first 4 minutes, update on where we are today, next 7 minutes, the 3 things we need to start focusing on this week, and then how many minutes is that? I don't know. 11, I think. Maths. I was never very good at maths at school. That's why I'm doing what I do now. Probably have a proper job if I was good at maths. I think that was 11 minutes. You know, so final 4 minutes, confirmation of next meeting time, and action steps, right? It can be a really simple 3-point agenda. Where we were, what we need to do this week, what we need to do in the future, right? It can be really simple and basic. But people will respond to that well, and you'll start building, or if you've got respect already, you'll start increasing the respect you've got if you put out an agenda and stick to the agenda. The very last thing is, and this is for those of you who are either new to technology or where you know team members or board members or clients are new to the technology that you're using, in advance of your meeting, send out a link both to the technology itself, but also ideally to the FAQ page or to a very simple page of instructions on how to get the technology working, and very particularly what to do if the technology fails. Now that what to do can be follow the instructions from the technology provider, or it can be, for example, here's my mobile number. If I cut out for any reason, send me a text message or send me a WhatsApp and let me know. All right, just be in clear communication with people. How do they use the software? And particularly, what should they do if it goes wrong for them, if it fails? Because we're all fumbling towards getting a lot of this stuff working. So there will be a lot of teething problems and hiccups. All right, my friends, I hope that's been useful for you. So a very quick reminder, tomorrow we're going to start looking at how you look and sound on camera and on phone. I think you'll enjoy that. But for today, before you even present, before you even begin, think carefully about calendar invitation titles. Make your online presentations as brief as possible and send out an agenda detailing the 3 main things that you're going to cover. I hope that's useful for you. I hope you're all safe and well, and your loved ones are as well. It's such a troubling time for many of us, so I hope you're all very well, and look forward to speaking to you tomorrow.